I'm Herman Faust, and this is Enjoy It While It Lasts. On today's Newsish, I have several stories from the science department to start us off today. A big fusion milestone has been reached. Repeatable net energy gain. Don't worry, I'll tell you what it means. Also, artificial intelligence has made a major antibiotic breakthrough, and scientists are mapping the middle of the earth. I look at Warner Brothers being acquired by someone and break down the different angles of the story, mainly what's happening with the franchises that we care about seeing. A couple of new trends are going on. Drones dropping goods into prisons, silent walking, and third places opening up. Oh, and Goose Patrol is a real thing. Although vaping in Dallas is not a real thing anymore. I'm also going to look at the new construction in and around the Dallas Zoo, then head on south on 35 to Waco because Baylor is making moves in AI and catalytic converters are safer than ever. Enjoy this week's Newsish. This week has been a little bit crammed for me. This weekend, we're going to go and celebrate my wife graduating. She's got her doctorate, and her graduation ceremony is on Friday. So we decided to rent out a lake house to go and spend the weekend there near her school, so we could go to the ceremony, but then also just have a full weekend of celebrating her accomplishment. The only downside to that has been me needing to make sure that I have everything done for the show by Thursday, and including the weekend's social media posts and all that good stuff. I am a procrastinator. I am a last minute worker. There's lots of times where I am working on an episode basically up until the time I release it, where I release it as soon as I'm done, and that's why some of them are late on Fridays. So it's been a challenge for me to make sure that I have all of my clips and everything ready, but hopefully I haven't missed anything and everything is set up for things to go smoothly for the show for the weekend, without me having to interrupt our family getaway. You may notice that you're only hearing me. You're not hearing Trisha today. This will be a solo Newsish. If you're curious as to why she's out, one of my last two episodes will give you the reason. Either she loved hearing me talk about my time on a trampoline as a kid so much that she decided to spend the day jumping on hers, or she is someone that relates to the other episode, most recent episode I put out, where I've talked about how we have a whole lot of demands on our time and energy this time of year. And maybe she is overbooked for December. Which one of those two is it? I don't know. For her sake, I'm hoping that it's having fun on the trampoline. Anyway, let's get on with the Newsish this week. Our first story is how we've taken one step closer as humanity to being able to have clean, basically limitless energy. Scientists have been trying to master fusion, which is what the sun does naturally. It smashes tiny atoms together so hard that they merge and basically create energy, huge amounts of energy, and don't have any carbon or waste associated with it. It can be, it has been, I should say, so extremely difficult to master because of the extreme levels of heat needed. What happens within the sun is its own gravitation also adds to the force along with the heat. And since we don't have that type of gravitational force, we rely pretty much only on making heat that will be hotter than the core of the sun. And we have been trying that to basically create energy. So, in doing so, we obviously use a massive amount of energy every time we try to create some. In 2022, there was one time where it was like the one famous shot is what scientists call it, where there was a example of more energy being produced than what was used to create the heat. Since then, that's been kind of the goal of it, that it needs to be able to be repeatable, or else we're just throwing away a bunch of our effort, throwing away a bunch of energy at this dream. But recently, this year, scientists have repeated the experiment multiple times. It's worked out where the energy produced is more than the energy used. And again, this has happened several times. So now it looks like this sci fi dream of clean, renewable energy is actually a possibility. By the way, this is happening at the National Ignition Facility in California. And the way they do it is they use 200 high powered lasers, all focused on a tiny fuel pellet of hydrogen that is about the size of a eraser on the end of a pencil. So now that they have had multiple times of reaching ignition, which is what they call it when they produce more power than what they use, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we are ready to create power plants on this for this form of energy. But it does mean that that's possible one day, probably. We are now into the point of fine tuning the mechanics and all the boring parts of the science, I guess, to make it scalable and reproducible on a mass level. What it could mean eventually, though, is a huge change in our environment. It could mean that we have energy that doesn't harm our environment anymore, and hopefully try to stop and reverse the damage, at least some of the damage we've done to the Earth's environment. We It also would obviously completely change the way we look at oil, for example, or the way we deal with all of our current sources of energy. This is something that, if it becomes scalable, once it becomes mass producing enough, it is the type of thing that movies would say is going to be the end of wars, because now we're going to have less need of resources that are non-renewable. I don't personally believe in humanity enough to think it'll be that good for us, but the positive effects are no doubt going to be huge once it gets scalable. This next big breakthrough that I'm going to tell you about is one from the medical community, but it came from an AI brain, not a human's brain. First, I'm going to take a second and tell you about the problem a little bit. Scientists have been trying to figure out how to combat bacteria that have grown resistant to other drugs. I am somebody that can speak on this a little bit as I guess, victim of the bacteria. That was one of the complications in my process, and why one lung transplant facility decided to not take me on as a patient, because I have bacteria in my lungs that was shown resistant to all known possible drugs. And this can happen to many different strands of bacteria, many different types of bacteria, I guess. Bacteria it's a biological thing. It evolves, and it's microscopic, and it definitely evolves faster than animals would. It doesn't take decades or 100 years to see slight evolutions in bacteria, it can happen within years. So bacteria of different kinds definitely grow resistant to the types of medications that we have for them, the antibiotics we have for them. The way we counteract that is we create new antibiotics. We create sometimes whole new families of antibiotics. The thing is, that can take millions and millions of dollars worth of research and years of trying and failing before you find any type of chemical structures that can even really be properly tested, even much less get to the point of creating a new usable drug. Well, the AI that was used was able to scan millions of possible chemical shapes and structures. Of course, it does that in just minutes. And it was able to then invent a whole new drug structure, one that no human chemist had ever come up with before. Not just tweaking a medication that was already existed, it created its own new chemical mixture, and it created more than one actually, and then it was able to kind of give the top candidates, I guess is what I should say, for which are the ones that should be tested by the least amount of harm they would do to humans. And so, of course, they went forward with testing them the same as they would start testing any drugs with just in clinical, or I'm sorry, not clinical, in laboratory trials and also with mice. They tested it on what the World Health Organization calls a superbug, one that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but it's a bacteria that has caused several amounts of dangerous hospital infections and has been very resistant to all traditional antibiotics. And in the studies under the microscope, the new drug appeared to be working. It appeared to be doing its job and basically destroying the bacteria. And it also appears that it is non-toxic to human cells in the early test. It's performed so well that they are going to move forward to preclinical trials. It's almost to the point of being tested on people already, is how well this drug has performed so far. So we are almost to the point now of just fully replacing the most important, smartest people that we have, because AI can create medicines better than we can. Side note, I do think it's a little bit funny that AI, of course, is something that has been developed by some of the smartest people that we have, but it seems to me like it's going to replace the smartest of us first before it trickles down and replaces the rest of us in day-to-day life. But yeah, who knows? Maybe in a year from now, I'll be taking some new medication that AI came up with that helps reverse lung damage, and it'll be like I never had CF to begin with. Our next and last major science news story of the day is that geologists have basically gotten better at, I'll call it an X-ray, or giving our Earth an MRI. Seismic tomography is basically how the shock waves travel through different parts of the Earth and how the waves change in density or structure based off of the rocks that they're passing through. It's a way that scientists have always kind of scanned under the ground, but it's just gotten, I guess, better. The technology behind it has gotten better, and just like every other technology, basically, you don't hear a lot about the technologies getting worse. Anyway, what's new this time though? What's making it a news story is they have found these giant land masses deep inside the earth that's way deeper than they expected to find this type of mass, I guess. As of now, it's unclear what exactly the structures are. The current first few theories that scientists have are that it's ancient, like ocean crust, the floor of the ocean that got pushed down underground over the billions of years. It could be chemical leftovers from the Earth's early formation. Um, it looks, or it could be a super dense rock. What they're a super dense rock megastructure, which sounds made up, but that's what I am reading here. Then that it will help us understand how heat moves upwards, how different volcano formations come about, and also to connect to another story we had last week, how volcano chains work, and also how earthquakes work, where I guess even better than what we already know about them. I'm not saying this is going to change day to day life for anybody, but what it does do is it turns looking at the Earth's core from less of a guessing game, and it's becoming more of a map that we're building of our own Earth. All right, I'm going to change gears a bit because my next story is by far less important to us as just one, as humanity. And it's also at the same time way more confusing and hard to understand what's happening. And despite being less important, will impact our day to day lives way more than the scientific stories I've been talking about. I'm going to talk about the WB being sold to, is it Netflix? Is it Paramount? We're going to see. Like most people, I was stunned whenever I first saw the news that Netflix was going to be buying Warner Brothers, and that would also include, I didn't realize that Warner Brothers owned HBO. It seems like every time I see news about Netflix's finances, I'm reading about how they're losing money. So I was surprised to see that were going to be buying one of the biggest content makers that we have. And I had the same type of thoughts and concerns that apparently a lot of people inside the industry have had, in that I was thinking that this just kind of seems like a bad thing for creators and for people that don't want the generic blockbuster movies that we get as the only form of content that they take in. It feels like we're moving in a direction of consolidating every movie maker or TV show maker, basically every creative, under one label, under one company. And that in doing so, you're not increasing the diversity of the creative products being put out. You're hurting it. You're making things more monotone. On top of that, seeing as it's Netflix, I worried, I guess not worried is not the right word for me. People in the industry worried. I more wondered if the movie theater experience itself was going to get hurt by this in any way. I don't know if Netflix would want to ever try to make movies basically go straight only to Netflix or not. But I also don't, even if they don't go that far, I don't think that they have it in their best interest to support movie theaters. It seems like it behooves them to have movies be on Netflix as soon as possible and exclusively on Netflix as soon as possible. So that's another way it affects consumers, besides the content that could possibly be getting made turning out to look and feel the same. It also means having less choice as far as where we get our entertainment from. This is kind of the whole reason that we have laws against companies forming monopolies to begin with. If a company controls an entire industry, at that point, they can pretty much dictate to the consumer what's gonna what's gonna happen, what the world is gonna be like for this industry, and the consumer really can't decide that they want to give their money to anybody else because there won't be anyone else. It'll just pretty much be Netflix. They'll be the only ones that produce things for us to watch. Well, either Netflix or Paramount, because then apparently hostile takeover is a term that's real and not just made up for movies, because the Paramount is bidding a hostile takeover, which I had to Google the term and you know teach myself what it means. Um, I guess it means that they are going to present their bid directly to the shareholders instead of the manager managing board, basically saying, "Hey, these guys fucked up. We have a better deal for you." So as of right now, it's actually still up in the air as to which company is going to be able to absorb the WB. But either way, it is all going to get taken over by one or the other, which would include a ton of content. I want to talk about the things that is actually being bought now. As I said earlier, HBO is one, and their deep catalog of shows. So yeah, I guess real quick, I want to go down the list of what all is being purchased here, franchise-wise, the things that the fans would actually care about. Um, the biggest one's probably the DC universe. So all of those upcoming James Gunn movies that are planned are gonna be. It's not that they're. I don't think it's any doubt of any of these things, by the way, being at risk for not being made. But it's more of a question of how are we going to be able to consume them, mainly being the theater versus the streaming experience, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, the DC universe, all the classic cartoons like Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Scooby Doo. But other big things would be the Game of Thrones series, of course, with HBO, the Lord of the Rings series, and Harry Potter. Like I said, um, they apparently have currently have Friends as well. There's also several horror series that it comes with. Uh, the whole Conjuring universe, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Beetlejuice, Gremlins, and Final Destination are all under Warner Brothers. Games would be affected. Mortal Kombat, Rocksteady, and NetherRealm are both under the Warner Brothers label. Another part of the story that's weird to me is that it was thrown out there that the deal might not go through with Netflix making the purchase, but it may with Paramount. And also, for what it's worth, part of the Paramount deal is funded by the Saudi fund. This, in and of itself, is a big deal because what it would be is a foreign sovereign nation owning a media company in that functions in the United States, which just at least raises questions as to what influence that buys those countries over just the uh, general public, I guess. So honestly, I really don't know which possible buyer of WB is better for us in the long run as a consumer, as a base, as a movie watching base. I mean, one more quick hit on movies, separate note, but also a bummer. Shrek 5 is being delayed. This is the third time there's been a delayed announcement. As of right now, it's being said that we'll get Shrek 5 in June of 2027. So basically, after my kids graduate college. So enough with movies now. I wanted to make sure I talk about this story from South Carolina. Prison guards caught a drone dropping off some crab legs, some steaks, and some drugs that were trying to get smuggled in. Apparently, this is not a one time thing. This is a thing that happens around prisons commonly. I guess it's semi effective, but this time, I don't know if this one's making news simply because it was caught or the food that was getting dropped in, but somebody was trying to get some good food to an inmate and accidentally ended up feeding some guards instead. It makes sense that I guess it's happening more though, because it does seem like a highly easy thing to pull off and low risk. They made no arrests, and this time when the guards got the food instead of the prisoners and the drugs too. Let's not forget that. Um, so I wonder if they're gonna start just like shooting them down whenever they see them. Like, what's the defense? What else could you do? You're not gonna have some force field around the prison. I I really don't know. I guess they could have a netting. That's the thing. You got to start having just netting over prison yards. That's your only way to defend against drone drops. So there, I solved your problem. For the next story, there is a new term trending on social media: silent walking. Silent walking is going on walks without headphones, no music, no podcast, not using your phones at all, just, going on a walk. um, it is apparently a trend now for people to talk about going on a walk with no distractions. Okay, so on the one hand, it's funny to me that we are talking about, hey, it's talking about enough that it's like newsworthy that, hey, yeah, it's good to go on a walk and look around and not just stare at your phone the whole time. But if it takes this, then I'm glad that people are doing it more. I didn't realize, myself probably at one point, I didn't realize how much of my walks I used to stare at my phone. And even the benefits of not listening to something at times just to let your brain kind of reset. I mean, I get it. There are benefits. It is a thing. Like, even I used to always walk listening to something, and now I do listen. I mean, I guess I'm part of this trend. I just didn't realize I was doing it just on my own. I wasn't doing it because I saw a thing. So I'm glad more people are disconnecting from their phones and re-engaging with the world. Um, it still seems semi-post-apocalyptic to me that we are having to announce on social media that we are not looking at social media or listening to something while we're walking. Um, Although, hey, I think I am great listening material on your walks, by the way. But if you don't want to listen to me at that time, I do. I do stand by the idea of walking or just letting yourself have some time, whether it's walking or driving or just any point of the day. Let yourself have a time where it's not taking in, whether it be taking in sound, taking in scrolling. Just give it some time of being on coast, I guess, for a 20-30 minute stretch, which is basically, I think, the heart of what's behind the trend of silent walking. So I can get behind it in that way. In some business news, there's been a surge of opening businesses that are referred to as third places. Basically, it's not your home, it's not your job, it's a place you go to hang out, though. So this would be bookstores, coffee shops, cafes, anywhere you could just sit and hang out for a while. So basically, this means people are deciding to spend their money on going to hang out in places again. It's been over 6 years since the last time there's been an increase in these types of businesses opening. So just before the pandemic hit, it had the decline had already started, and then of course tons of businesses closed down during COVID, and since then it's just kind of continued to be a decline of people not going out, choosing to keep their money, uh, to save their money, and people, I guess, have tended to hang out at their homes and at other people's homes. But for the first time in a while, there's an increase on uh, people going out and just hanging out in the public together again. I think that's cool. I think it makes the world a more interesting place when we have more places that people actually go to and just kind of spend time and hang out, even if they're not directly talking to strangers. It's just having those shared places. It just fosters a better sense of community. And I don't know. I've always loved bookstores and little coffee shops. So maybe it's just that I like the types of places that's being opened that is making me feel good about the story. It's that old man in me wanting the mall to come back so we could all just hang out at the mall. Last week with Trisha, I had a story about a pack of geese attacking an older woman here, in the DFW area. I have another goose story for you guys today. This one, though, is not from around us. This story takes place in Worcestershire, Worcestershire sauce, Massachusetts. Um, Here the city has started to hire trained dogs and their handlers to perform a geese patrol. Um, they are going around parks to chase off geese because there have been a large number of attacks. Geese have been attacking people regularly over there, enough to where the city has called in the dogs. I'm not sure if I said it already, but they're using border collies to round them up and chase them out instead of trying to hunt the geese. Which, I would think, why don't they attack these attacking geese and turn around and maybe use those to feed some homeless? But instead, they just chase them out the parks. I'm sure that lady from last week's story really wishes that there would have been a goose patrol on her park the day that it all went down for her. All right, I'm gonna get more local now, starting with Dallas. It is going into effect now, the Dallas indoor vaping ban. Basically, now vaping has to follow the same rules as cigarettes, where it can't be indoors anywhere and can't be just outside of a establishment. It has to be so far away from a building's, I mean, from a door, so just like smokers have to be. I think that if people that vaped didn't have a large portion of them be very obnoxious with their vaping for the first several years that it became a thing, that the bans probably would not have ever people would not have fought for them to be banned as hard as cigarettes are. So this means all restaurants, bars, any stores, any public buildings, any entertainment, any place like that where smoking's already banned, that means no vaping at all. Now, I don't know if it really needs to uh, logically have the exact same type of bans that cigarettes do, because it is different. Vaping is not the same type of harmful smoke that cigarettes give off, but places are gonna start smelling a lot less sweet now that this ban is in effect. Also, locally, there's some changes coming to the Dallas Zoo and the area right around the Dallas Zoo. There's a large multi-acre expansion of the Dallas Zoo that has been going on that is supposed to be completed at some point in 2026. It is going to include a new African predators exhibit and it's going to upgrade the primate habitats. There's also going to be an expansion on the children's area um, and a new research and education center. So it's a really like big, massive overhaul of the zoo, not just some small addition. Also, outside of the zoo, right nearby on the highway, there's going to be a deck park added, similar to the Clyde Warren Park. This park is going to connect to the zoo. It's going to have a bridge that you can walk over to get to the zoo, but it's also just going to add, similar to the Clyde Warren Park, it's going to add another bit of green space, another bit of public space for people to hang out outside. Another thing I didn't realize that it does, but it apparently softens the noise around the city when it does that. It softens the noise from the cars. So it's one of those things that's going to hopefully just create another area and make the Dallas Zoo a full day experience, just better than it has been in a while. Moving on to Waco news. I'm going to talk about Baylor because Baylor is getting into the AI game pretty heavily. This is now, surprisingly, the second episode of I've done a solo in a Newsish where I've had AI stories directly related to Waco. But Baylor University is having or announcing a major AI research initiative. They're going to be focusing on medical diagnostics and AI development, AI ethics. They're going to be working on engineering, agricultural AI, using AI for education and building learning systems. So this is Baylor trying to become a major AI hub. They are investing heavily, spending tens of millions of dollars over several years to make sure that they have facilities, have the correct people in place, hire the correct faculty, and just be ready again to try to fully assert themselves as a powerhouse in the AI industry, which I think would be a little bit of a hilarious duality of Waco if all of a sudden it does become this. I also know that would be really great for the area, though. It would have to boost jobs, but also just give the talking point of what Waco represents now. Because I'm gonna quickly shift and tell you my last story of Waco feels a lot more like a Waco story to me. Waco PD has busted a major catalytic converter theft ring. Um, they've made multiple arrests and have tied this ring to, I think it was over 100 vehicles that they've hit and cut off. They found, of course, all the tools, all the saws, and they found a couple of parts that they were still in their possession that they hadn't sold yet. But they got this group off the street. So I'm sure now there's no more catalytic converters that will be stolen in Waco anytime soon. All right, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you if you're still hanging out listening. I appreciate you. Hopefully next week Trisha will be back with me. I think the Newsish really flows better when I got the two of us instead of me by myself. But if you're still here, again, appreciate you. Hope you are looking forward to tomorrow's deep dive. I have actually tomorrow I have a live interview for you. It's with Jesse, aka Pinky, a man that tells me about how he stabbed himself once, and we learn basically about who he is that led up to that and what the aftermath has been for him. Anyway, hope you guys out there have enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you will join me for some more. Remember, you only got one life to live. You might as well enjoy it while it lasts. Thank you.